Do you need a materials list for your van build? In 2018, I converted my first van with no real plan. I was on a super tight budget and built it on my mate's driveway. I used a notepad to draw a basic floor plan and keep track of materials. I was pretty disorganized. A couple years later, I bought another van, and this time it would be different. I spent hours watching videos, reading blogs, and researching materials. I fell into a rabbit hole, and the problem was that I was still confused and kept questioning whether I had picked the right materials for the job. Despite all the time spent planning, or at least what I thought was planning, my intention back then was to start my own van building business, which I did do right after that build. However, even though I'm a professional carpenter, building a van is very different from building a house. Because you're building a house on wheels, you need to consider weight. Some standard household materials like MDF or chipboard won't work in a van. Fast forward to now, and I've built over 10 vans. I've combined my years of experience as a carpenter with the knowledge I've gained since that first build. When I work with clients, I now have the right planning in place before I even meet with them. I've created a system where I already know what materials to use, how much they'll cost, and I confidently know that I'm able to build a high quality van within budget. The key component is a well-structured materials list. This list keeps me organized, accountable, tracks costs, and keeps me within budget. I like to show you how my system to create a materials list works for any van. Now you might be thinking you don't need a materials list, particularly if your van is small, right? Well, the truth is you can build a van without a materials list. It's just going to be more difficult and take a lot longer. All the small parts add up, and it can be a shock when you get to the checkout. A materials list will ensure you know how much everything will cost before you even start. It will reduce the time you spent researching and just makes the process more pleasurable than pain. To start building my materials list, I create a spreadsheet and break down each section of the build into a subheading. Under each heading, I'll list all the materials for that part of the build. I'll create subheadings in the same order I'll be building the van. Starting with the subfloor and the flooring, I'll list all the materials that I need for that section. So I'll record the insulation, the plywood, the battens, glue, screws, and the final flooring. I'll then record the quantities of each item that I'll need. So for example, I might need 2 sheets of plywood and 2 sheets of foil board insulation. I'll track the costs then, and then I'll tally up the total costs at the bottom, so I'll have a total cost for that section of the build. I'll then move on to recording all the materials for the ventilation. This could be your roof fan or windows. And then I'll go on to the insulation for the walls and ceiling, and then the linings for the walls and ceiling as well. I'll then move on to the cabinetry, which can be broken down further into the bed, the cupboards, or a shower if you're going to be having a larger build. I'll then move on to painting and staining, electrical, plumbing, appliances, and then anything that's on the outside of the van, for example, an awning or roof racks. You know, we want to track every part of the build. If you have an older van, then I might also, or a very dirty van, then I might also add on to cleaning before the subfloor and flooring. We might need to get rid of rust or do some repainting before we start the build, and we want to track all the costs within the budget. Breaking down the build like this will mean you stick within your budget. If one area is too expensive, you'll need to dial back and look for cheaper materials or change something within the build. The idea is to stick within the budget before you actually start. Now I know the electrical system is one of the most confusing elements. In the next video, I'll teach you how to work out your electrical needs so you can choose the best system for your budget and what materials to buy. If you have any questions about the electrical system, write them in the comments below and I'll cover them in the next video. Thanks for listening.